Hi, and welcome to the Changing Perspectives podcast, the show where we discuss a variety of topics including grief, parenting, relationships, mental health, and pop culture. Join us and explore a number of changing perspectives. We're your hosts, Jenni and Josh Brennan. Hi, Jenni.
Hello.
What's happening?
Not much. What's up with you?
Do you know that we start the show off essentially with a hi, Jenni, and then we end it with a bye, Jenni?
Oh, that is so...
Yeah.
That is so balanced.
Yes.
Huh.
We are very, is it a feng shui type of thing that we do in this episode, this podcast?
Feng shui.
Feng shui. I definitely botched that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 85. 85 episodes. Quickly getting to that magical 100. Mm-hmm. We have 15 episodes to get our stuff together to figure out what that 100th episode is going to look like, but...
I already told you. I think it should be a compilation.
Oh, I know.
So you have to go start getting clips.
Exactly. That's work.
Oh, right.
That's a lot of work. We might have to solicit some help for that task. Hey, everyone.
We need an intern.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, if you have not done so already, you have to sign up for Jenni's newsletter. Go to changingperspectivesonline.com. Sign up for that newsletter. The first of every month, you get a great newsletter with all kinds of great content, blog articles, podcast episodes, links to the shop and other merchandise and fun stuff. So check that out. Plus, you will get a chance to sometimes be the first to learn about special things and offerings and contests and that kind of stuff. Also, you have to go check out the shop on the Changing Perspectives website. You can get all kinds of excellent stuff for the winter, Christmas, holidays, and if you really need that buy Jenni or lean into it gear, that's where you find it, right, Jenni?
Mm-hmm. True story.
Absolutely. And of course, if you're a pet lover like us, then you need to give Chewy a try.
Your Boston accent just came out.
They did, didn't it?
Yeah.
Their shipping is super fast. We usually have our order the very next day. We use Chewy's easy auto ship feature for our dog food, pet medicine, and pet treats. If you need your auto ship order faster and need to delay your shipment, you can do so quickly via the mobile app or their website. And exclusive to Changing Perspectives fans, right now you can get 30% off your first auto ship order by clicking the link over on the Changing Perspectives Facebook page. Jenni put a pinned post up there with the link. You have to use that link to get the discount, right, Jenni? You just can't go
Correct.
to changing Chewy.com. You have to click that link to get the discount, and that is a great discount on your first auto ship order. Chewy.com, everybody. It's the way to go if you have fur babies.
Or you know somebody with fur babies and you want to buy them a holiday gift.
There you go. Hey, nice. That's a good one. Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Okay.
So how fun was the interview that we had with Marielle Melling, Jenni?
It was so much fun.
It was excellent. So we recorded an interview a couple days ago. We're going to play that for you guys in a minute. But Marielle is the author, blogger. Her website is lovinglifewithlittles.com. She's got a great Facebook and Instagram presence as well. She puts out great content. She's a mom, a coach, sort of a life coach. I kind of want her to guide my life right now.
Yes. Her
perspective on things and trying to stay sane and sort of simplify things and focus on the joy. It's really great.
We recorded this on a Thursday night, and this week was very long. Mm-hmm. I always forget that the weeks leading up to the holidays are always pretty heavy for me work-wise. In terms of sort of emotional content, the holidays are hard for folks, especially when a lot of them are in therapy for grief. And I also always forget that if I take some time off during that time, that the week before and the week after is pretty heavy. So last week was when we recorded this was the week before I was taking some time off for Thanksgiving. So it was very, very heavy. So by the time we got to Thursday evening to record, I had worked late every single night and was exhausted and really low energy. And talking to her really kind of shifted things for me in terms of my perspective and finding positivity and was really grounding. So I think this comes at a perfect time, right? To have it be the Monday this is being released the Monday of Thanksgiving week. I think a lot of people are probably feeling what I was feeling last Thursday evening, and hopefully this serves as some great sort of perspective and grounding, and a great way for folks to really kind of mindfully begin to move through their holiday season.
100%.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Well, that's enough prep. Can we just
get into it? Yeah.
Play the episode or the interview?
Sure.
I'm fumbling over my words today. All right, everybody. Without further ado, from lovinglifewithlittles.com, Marielle Melling. Here she is. All right, Changing Perspectives fans, please help us welcome from lovinlifewithlittles.com, Marielle Melling. Hi, Marielle.
Hello.
Thanks
to be with you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. We're happy to have you.
So happy to have you. So Marielle, I met you sort of online in the blogosphere. And it's always so lovely to finally be able to like meet folks. You do a great job on your Instagram with videos, or I guess on Instagram, they're called Reels or I don't know what the videos on.
Yeah, they're mostly lives. What I do, I haven't done a reel yet. That seems like out of my league.
Yeah, so I haven't either, and I also haven't done a live. But you are doing that, so I feel like I know you like in real life a little bit already because you're out there doing videos in a really supportive way for folks. So I'm excited to talk to you today to have you share some tips and strategies and insights for folks during this time of year.
Yeah, hopefully we can get into some helpful stuff.
Yeah, great.
Marielle, I've been enjoying getting to know you through your social media and Facebook and Instagram. And I agree with Jenny. It's a lot of great content, and your videos are excellent, and you make it very approachable and reachable. So I guess start off by telling us what inspired you to get started with Lovin Life with Littles.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple years ago, it was a super busy time of life. And at the time we had 4 kids. I was working 4 part-time jobs. My husband was really busy with work and had really long hours and was really never home. And then we had our 5th child. And in the midst of all of this, I realized that I was having a lot of peace. And that while I couldn't do everything, I felt really good in knowing that I could do what mattered most. And I started looking into, other people who were having peace in much more difficult situations than mine, and really got into that whole idea and realized that I wanted to share those ideas with other people, the things that bring us peace, the things that help like our day-to-day living and routines and all that kind of stuff. And so I have been doing the blogging and published a book last year, and then have been on Instagram a little bit more recently. So
amazing.
That's kind of what started it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you talk about that a lot. I mean, I guess that's kind of the core, that finding peace, right? That sort of inspired everything else when you realized that you were able to find that peace. How did you find that, or kind of what even made you realize that you were experiencing that? Because so often when we're in it, we're not always able to be aware of sort of how we're feeling about it. So are you able to sort of pinpoint how you realized that, or also what kind of led you to that at all?
Yeah, it's hard to I don't think I can pinpoint a moment or anything, but I do know that oftentimes people would say I can't believe you're doing it all. How do you do it all? And I just felt like, I don't feel like I'm doing it all. And I looked at my life and I'm like, I'm not doing it all. I've said no to this and this and this. And, and I think questions like that, when people, I guess what they perceived, they thought my life was like, that I should be overwhelmed and that I probably was all these things, and then thinking, yeah, that's not actually how it is right now. I feel good. So I don't know if that answers.
That does. And actually, as sort of I'm having like a meta moment right now, as you were talking about the fact that you had 4 kids and your husband was working and you were working, I think you said 4 part-time jobs, and then you had a 5th child. My internal reaction was like, oh my gosh, that's so much. That's so stressful, right? And I guess that's kind of like the societal story we put on people, right? Like if you have more than one kid, if you've got multiple jobs, if you're the parent that's staying at home with children while another partner is out working a lot outside of the home, that's super stressful and crazy, and you must not be happy. But that's not true, right? That's not necessarily true.
Right.
So yeah, realizing that like that construct is even at work in my mind, because that was the reaction I was having, like,
Yeah.
whoa. But so that's really powerful for you to be able
I
to
think
notice
it
that.
is. And it's helpful to know too that there are moments like that, right? There are times
Sure.
that I'm stressed out and that, everybody has bad days and I think we'll talk later too, but there are still hard things that are happening. But in the midst of the hard, and that's where the title of my book came from, is that you still come back to a grounding foundation of peace and joy. And that's kind of your base level rather than like the norm is crazy burnout all the time.
Yeah.
I
And
wonder,
that's such like, oh, go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to say, I wonder how that starts or where that comes from, right? So as like a society, like our narrative, when we started telling about your background and your inspiration for starting the, Lovin Life with Littles, I got like anxious and stressed. Like,
Yeah.
what, 4 jobs
Sorry.
and the fifth kid, and it's just like, how does, why does, the human mind, or maybe it's American mind, I don't know what it is, but we start off with like this, we're stressed out first, we start from a negative place first, right? Why don't we start from a peaceful place first, or a de-stressed place? I don't know, I don't know if I'm making sense, but I wonder why our baseline is that, hearing your story and going, wow, that must be horrible. Right,
Yeah,
like that must be so hard and stressful. Why do we
that
Right.
is an
go there?
interesting question.
Rather than thinking like, wow, you're so blessed, you've got 5 children and you were
Mm-hmm.
able to have 4 part-time jobs at the same time. Like you're right.
Mhm.
Like we come at it from sort of this place of, I guess, stress and negativity versus blessing and positivity. And I do think it's probably something about like our American culture. And our listeners are sort of all around the world, so we don't just have listeners from the US. So it'll be interesting to hear perspective from folks that live outside of the US. But I think
Mhm.
Americans do sort of tend to pride ourselves on being busy and being
Yeah.
stressed. And I wonder if sometimes we have a hard time giving ourselves permission to not be
Yeah,
stressed and to say like, I like
that's
my life.
something yeah, that's something I talk about a lot is letting go of busyness, because a lot of times we do see that as a badge of honor
Yeah.
or a badge of, this is how I'm supposed to live life. And we can have a very full life and still have meaningful rest and still,
Mm,
sit on the couch and enjoy time with our family. And that's not lazy. That's a beautiful part of life. And I wonder
right.
if part of that is that badge of busyness that has, there's some cool research and kind of the history of the increase of that as jobs have become more competitive and schools have become more competitive, and an expectation of perfection and achievement in a lot of ways too. That could maybe be, I was just thinking, Josh, what might be like underlying that stress is when we feel like we have to like have a perfect level in everything. Like that
Mm,
sounds pretty anxiety inducing. I don't know if that's part of it.
that
Yeah, I
makes
mean,
sense to me.
the idea of like what does success mean as a parent, as a professional?
Mhm.
Does it mean working more than 40 hours? Does it mean, oh, yeah, are you better at what? Are you a better employee because you didn't put your computer down at 5 o'clock? You kept working, or, when I get an email from a colleague at like 10 o'clock at night, I'm like, well, should I be working at 10 o'clock at night? Is that, are they better than me? Right. And, in my other life, as a dad, I coach a lot. So I'm a coach for, my kids' sports. And we were actually talking about recently about practice schedules, trying to figure out a time, practice time for a team. And one of the parents, because I said, does this day work? And then one of the parents says, well, actually, that's the only day he has free. And I thought, wow, that child's schedule is packed. But is that child, is that the badge of success, right? The fact that their schedule is so packed, there's only one day they have free, that they're going to fill with another practice. But I wonder how we can change the narrative a little bit and find that piece. And I think that
I would like you to coach my life, Marielle, and help me find the peace every day and question, hey, wait a minute, what actually is success?
Yeah. So I can tell you what I've learned. See, I don't know. It's not new, but I love sharing
I'm
it
gonna get a
because
notebook and be ready to go. So here we go.
it brings it down to a lot of basics. And it really, like when I feel the simplicity in it, it feels good to me. So I love sharing it. But what I have learned is that peace is a harmony between what we want, what we are doing, and what we're thinking and saying, right? And the highest level of that harmony happens when we are centered on love. Now, that is not new information, right? Wisdom leaders have been teaching us that forever, right? The Dalai Lama, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. Jesus Christ, the two great commandments, love God, love others as yourself. Like the Harvard study on adult development. I love that study. It's one of the longest of its kind. What did it find? The number one predictor of health and happiness is our relationships.
Right.
So a lot of times there's a lot of other things that we want in life, but when we can bring it back to, do I want love and compassion more than anything else, more than financial success, more than fame, more than praise, more than an accolade, or even like comfort or being right, or all these other things that come up in life. When we bring it back to that place of love and then align our actions, and even as far as like what activities are our kids signing up for, and is that allowing us to have time to love each other, or is it too much, right? Bringing it back to that intention kind of becomes a guiding principle for life.
And I think, I don't know about your family's experience, but I think our family's experience during this whole COVID, past almost 9 months or so, it's forced us to take a lot of stuff off of our plate as a family, right? Like sports got shut down, so coaching got shut down. And what was left was some real opportunities for love and connection and just peacefulness. And as things are kind of starting to ramp back up here, at the same time, it's also kind of shutting down. It's this weird dichotomy going on. I feel like all four of us in our house are kind of resistant to it because we've really enjoyed this time that we've been able to be gifted. And it's made us really question in a more meaningful way, how much do we really want to be doing these other things? Like, how important are they really to our family, to each of our children as individuals, and to us? And I think that is something I really want to hold on to. I feel like it's been a gift during this really difficult time, the sort of the gift of insight. And I feel that from a lot of like my patients too, and a lot like my sister, we've talked about it too, this like, we don't want to get swept back up in sort of our old life. We want to take some of our lessons and make some changes in our life. Have you experienced something like that? I mean, your children are younger, so they might not be being pulled so much yet, but was it an experience for you as well during this time?
So my experience with that actually happened several years ago, and we moved away. We lived on an island for 1.5 years.
Oh, wow.
And during that time, it's a small, beautiful place, and there was not much going on.
Yeah.
There wasn't library story time even. There weren't sports groups. There weren't I don't think there was a movie theater on the island. There wasn't a stoplight. I mean, it was a small living situation. And so we didn't have a schedule at all. And that was at times lonely, and at times learning how to have a different kind of joy and appreciate just going to the beach, and homeschooling in a different kind of way and things like that. And then when we came back, it was a kind of, I feel like what a lot of people are feeling right now, like it's this opportunity to reset.
Yes.
And to intentionally put back in what we want. And I had to do some almost soul searching, because I was raised, my parents are incredible. I'm so grateful for the experiences I had. And I was able to play 3 sports, and to play one of them year round, and to take piano lessons, and to be involved in a lot of different things. And my parents were able to do that for us. And we had 6 kids and 7 a lot of time. And so when I came back and I looked at, my husband's schedule and finances at the time and all these things, I thought, I'm not going to be able to do this for my kids. I can't do the same thing that my parents did for me. And I had to kind of get over that. Like, be okay doing something different, be okay doing what was best for my family. And I think all of us have to do that and not compare to either the childhood that we had or the life that we expected or what the neighbor's doing or what the best friend is doing, but really sit down and say, what is best for our family for right now?
Right. Or even get away from comparing to what we've done in the past, right?
Yeah.
And saying like, well, just because we used to do it that way doesn't mean we need to keep doing it that way, because maybe it wasn't serving a purpose for us. Maybe it wasn't serving us and our family and our needs. And so it is hard, though, to change. I mean, humans resist change. So changing is really, really hard. And we just tend to sort of fall into brain pathways that have been there for a long time, or just patterns and habits really easily. And I think the holidays are a great example of that, because we just sort of get swept up in traditions and things that we've always done, and that comparison piece too. Well, my neighbor's doing this, so I feel like I have to, or my kids' friends are doing this, so I guess our family has to as well. And then there's social media connecting everybody. I know that you talk a lot about kind of how to find peace and how to find sort of calmness in the holidays in particular. I actually think, are you still running, or are you doing like a 6-week kind of session on that? So
so it actually, today we're recording, it finishes tomorrow, so by the time it airs, we'll be done.
Okay, great. Yeah, so you just did that sort of almost like a support group training session on how to approach the holidays with less stress. So what are your sort of key tips on how to do that right now? Because this is going to go live the Monday before Thanksgiving. So boy, that's
perfect
probably
timing.
it really is. That's like when I feel like the green light turns on and it's full speed ahead for holiday stuff. And that usually means stress.
Well, this one too is particularly stressful because we can't see who we normally see, right? We're not going to be able to celebrate like we normally celebrate. So not only are there stressors in a normal year with holidays, but now we have this whole other thing where it's making it super, super stressful.
I totally agree. And we talked about that too. So within this challenge, and as I have tried to learn from others and say, what will really make this a peaceful season for people? Because I think the holidays amplify things. Like, it is a magical time, and we're focusing on gratitude and our personal reason for the season, like religiously, like there are so many good things that come out of the season. It also amplifies grief, and it amplifies stress and all of these other feelings. And so when I sat down and said, what do we really need to have a low stress, really peaceful holiday, I pulled out 7 topics to focus on. So why don't I run through those and then you tell me where you want to focus?
Sure. Sounds great. Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds
So
great.
the 7 things,
Sounds great.
The 7 things that we talked about were setting a clear intention for the season, letting go of perfectionist tendencies, planning, and we talked about gifts and hosting and all kinds of things, self-care for the season, mindfulness, sorrow and grief, and then serving with heart. So those are kind of the main topics that we talked about.
Do you feel like there was one topic? Oh, go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to say, because I'm looking at one of your memes, and I'm very interested in it. We started talking about what it means to be successful or perfect. So one of those 7 being perfectionism, and you have one. This meme is perfectionism is a coping mechanism. So I guess I would like you to start there and talk maybe a little bit about what that means and in the setting of the holidays and whatnot.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll give an example and then kind of maybe elaborate if that works. So somebody who has a difficult relationship with maybe an in-law or somebody who is coming to visit, right? And there is maybe not a lot of trust or not a lot of unconditional love, might feel a lot of pressure to make it the perfect holiday. If I have the perfect meal and the perfect entertainment and everybody gets along, that's going to help our relationship. So we turn to perfection in order to help us with a root hardship. So in this case, it's not actually about making the perfect dish. I don't really care about the perfect dish. What I care about is that hard relationship, that root hardship. And for me, this is a super helpful way to understand perfectionism, because most of all, it gives me a lot of compassion for, as a person, like if we are the one struggling with perfectionism, because perfectionism is hard, right? Like, what does it feel like to be a perfectionist? It feels like I'm never good enough. Mm-hmm. It feels like a lot of stress and a lot of pressure to perform. It feels like a constant, like even when there is success, it's not long lasting.
Right.
And so it brings in a lot of compassion for that person who is struggling with it, for us to be able to say, you know what, there's something hard here, mm-hmm. and that's okay. And kind of, holding our own heart. And it is also helpful. Brene Brown talks a lot about how, perfectionism doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
It affects our children. It affects our workplaces. So if we are working with somebody who is a perfectionist, or our parent was, it brings us some compassion for them to say, hey, there's something hard going on here. And what are they actually, trying to solve or trying to work with? And then the other thing that is really helpful about seeing it as a coping mechanism is that it helps us see how to actually overcome perfectionism. So we have to address that root hardship with a healthier coping mechanism. And then we also have to retrain our brain, because we're creatures of habit, like you were saying, Jenny, right? We just fall back into what we're used to doing. And so we have to address those perfectionist patterns and thought, habits that we've built over time. So a really big one Paul Hewitt talks about, he's a psychiatrist that's done a ton of research into perfectionism, but he talks about how the root cause or the root hardship for a lot of perfectionists is, or people who struggle with perfectionism, is a sense of inadequacy and a really flawed sense of self. And so then when we look at that, then we can say, okay, how are we going to handle that in a different way than perfectionism, in a healthier way?
And I think, all of that takes intentionality and mindfulness, right? Because if you're just rushing headfirst into the holiday season, you're not even stopping. There's no time, no space to stop and think about that happening. And so I think it's really important to think about it ahead of time. And I know, as someone that does a lot of grief work, I start talking about the holidays in October, sometimes in September, because people start thinking about it then. All of that starts coming up, sort of bubbling to the surface, because it's a really hard time of year. If you've lost somebody, it's not always a joyful, happy time. It's stressful and sad, and really triggers a lot of the grief. And so we think about that. And so what we wind up doing is sort of putting the brakes on and really kind of thinking about and looking at people's traditions in a way that they often have never done before, because we just don't give space to that. Usually this is the way we've always done it. So I've always stressed about making sure the turkey is cooked perfectly, so I'm going to do that again, right? And so really being able to think intentionally about the holidays, I think, is really important. And maybe that just means sitting down for 20 minutes and talking it through with someone. But I feel like we need to do a better job giving people space to do that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And that's the first step that we talk about, is setting that intention, because we always have intention, right? Intention is our motivation. It's what causes us to do things. It's always there. But that word intentional is meaning these days, like being purposeful about what we want.
Right.
And isn't that an empowering place, that we can decide what we want and we can work towards creating that? And a simple way is to, like you said, create that space, create that time to set that intention. And then in the moment when you're feeling stressed, or when you're feeling those perfectionist tendencies, stop and say why, right? That's all it takes. Why was I planning on doing this? What was the purpose of it? Was the purpose of this gift to have it be, wrapped to perfection, just whatever it was, or was it to create and to say, to show somebody, I care about you, I know your needs, I'm showing love here, and to just bring it back. That's a simple, click in the brain back to that why.
Yeah. So really asking yourself throughout every sort of step of the way, what's the why behind what I'm doing right now, and giving yourself permission to sort of change course and alter your direction based on your response there, and being really purposeful about what you're going to do with that. Yeah. So I'm curious, with all of those 7 steps that you outlined, or 7 sort of areas, is there one that maybe folks have the most sort of resistance to, or is sort of the biggest kind of learning piece for folks?
Can I guess the answer to that question?
Oh, okay.
Sure. Go, Josh.
I have a thought about that. It was going to be my next. Is it self-care? Because I think people have a huge problem saying, I have to take care of myself. In fact, I like your meme that's fill in the blank. I want to practice self-care, but, because there's a lot of buts when it comes to self-care.
There's a lot of buts. There are. Yeah. And so actually I would say that's a huge one. And as far as the numbers go, but the answer that I would go back to what Jenni said. It's whatever we weren't already doing, because we are resistant to change. Yes, so if I'm a really good planner, that part comes easy. If I am, really good at self-care, that part comes easy. It's whatever I was struggling with before. And we are such varied people that it varies across the board, but we are resistant to change. But yeah, Josh, self-care is, it's huge as far as like what it in our brains and the emotional space that conversation takes up. I feel bad if you read through the answers, right? It's hard. It's a hard thing. And a lot of the answers are, I know I should, but I feel guilty, or I don't have time, or whatever. And so we're feeling guilty for not doing it. And yet we feel guilty when we do it. And that's a hard place to be in.
And if you were to look at, your 7 items, and I think that the general person, maybe, especially maybe a parent or a working parent, might look at that and prioritize and go, okay, well, self-care is last because I'm last. Like all these other things need to happen first. I got to make sure this is perfect. I got to make sure that my kids are taken care of. I have to make sure we put a focus on service, which I love, which I want to get to. But they're always going to put self-care last, and that's not okay. It's okay to boost that up and have self-care be a priority. How do we make the world make self-care a priority? I don't know. That's a big ask, I think.
It is a big ask. And I think it is kind of reaching people one by one, because when we really understand what self-care is, and I think that self-care these days is almost a buzzword. It's everywhere. Everybody's supposed to be doing it. It's the cure-all for everything. And I think that along with all of that conversation, there's a commercialization, and you need this product to do it. And there's also, we've lost touch with what it actually means in a lot of ways. And so, one person said, I can't do self-care because I have anxiety, and taking time, like getting out of my schedule and just focusing on myself makes me more anxious. I'm like, well, then that's not self-care, right? So that's the first myth that I often talk about, is what is self-care even? And it's not a checklist of things. It's not what I should or shouldn't be doing, but rather it's a mindset that believes 3 things. And those 3 things are, number 1, I am a human with real needs for health and happiness. Mm-hmm. So those needs are not fictional. Like, we actually need sleep. Right. We actually need human interaction. Mm-hmm. We actually need these things. And number 2 is that I am primarily responsible for my own health and happiness. And then number 3 is I am worthy of health and happiness.
Right.
So when we look at the reasons that people don't practice self-care, a lot of it falls back to that mindset, whether it's I'm not worthy, or there's almost a well-intentioned disconnect from reality with what our needs actually are, and that it takes a little bit of effort and time to fulfill those. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think there's 2, you said something that made me think of, the sort of the commercialization of self-care, and, going to Facebook and searching the term self-care, going to your Apple Podcasts, and I got to find a podcast on self-care. So I know what I'm doing. And then there's this element of, well, am I doing it right?
Right.
I'm
Am I
like,
doing
I'm like
self-care good
rating,
enough?
I'm rating my self-care. Am I good at that or not good at that? And then because then you go back to perfection and all sorts of this vicious circle. And it's like, okay, well, so here's what it is. Here's self-care is different for everybody, right? We have to define it. So it's this individual thing, and really there's no wrong way to an extent, right? But you know, we have to erase the sort of thought process. Am I doing it right? I think that's
Yes.
part of what could be some negative thinking that's not helpful for folks.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, it's going to look different for everybody. As humans, we have we're pretty much the same as far as our needs go as humans, for our needs for health and happiness, right? We have a need for nutrition, for movement, for rest, for purpose, for progress, for play, and for connection. Like those are some of the ones that, like, pretty much we all have them. But the ways to fill those needs are countless. So what I love to have women do is sit down and say, okay, start with these 7, add anything else that you know is your need for health and happiness. When you think about the best version of yourself that's bringing the most energy to the day, that is going to allow you to have the most patience with your kids and serve others and bring your best self to your work. And, that best version of you, what do you need to be that person? And then list all the ways that you could fill those needs. Then you look back and you say, okay, which of these could I fit in my life? Which of these I like to call, when we talk about like not having time for self-care, not all self-care is created equal.
Right.
And so I like to find those ones that I know for me are going to meet needs in a big way, or, have lasting effects. For example, there's a cool study that showed it had people come and they were given money to go spend on themselves, and they came back and their happiness increased. And that was awesome, right? Came back the next day and that happiness level had gone back to the base level.
Right.
They brought people in, gave them money, same amount of money, said, go spend this on somebody else. Brought them back, studied their levels of happiness, and it was increased about the same level as when people spent money on themselves, actually. But they brought them back the next day, and those happiness levels were still high. And they could see effects from that a week later, right? So it's not all self-care is created equal. And it's a learning. I mean, people have been learning about health and happiness forever, right? Humans, we've been trying to figure it out forever. And so it is a process of learning new things and then trying it out and saying, okay, what did that do for my life? What did that do for my kids? What did that do for my health and happiness? And then being willing to try something new if it didn't work.
Right. I really, again, sort of going back to sort of asking the why, but also then like the what, right? Like, okay, so what did this do for me, and why did I do it? And how can I sort of incorporate that again or tweak it to sort of get the maximum benefit? But it does require some thought, right? I mean, it's not just like you could say, all right, I have some time tonight, I'm going to do self-care. And you're not necessarily going to kind of hit the mark. You've got to really think about yourself, in which of those sort of areas you sort of need the most in that given time. But I think it's really hard. I think if we go all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, talking about sort of that badge of busyness, that doesn't really fit well, right? Like if that's this sort of ideal or this value, that doesn't fit with self-care, right? Because that's when you start to look at self-care being selfish, because how can you have the badge of busyness and be so busy and still practice good self-care? So it's like this sort of dichotomy there that we've got to really break apart and encourage people to move away from.
Yeah. And I think it's really helpful when we look at that question, is self-care selfish? Right. And I think if we are taking it from the mindset of what it actually is, and it's not selfish, and we have to say why, right? We have to convince ourselves, because if we're feeling guilty, that's an emotion that's signaling we think something is wrong.
Right.
So it's really helpful to sit down and say, okay, what do I think is wrong about self-care? And it usually is that idea of like, I'm supposed to be focusing on other people and I shouldn't be thinking about myself. And the idea of selfish is actually like a disregard for other people, right? It's only focusing on myself. but I love to teach how self-care is an and proposition. It's good for me and it's good for other people, right? It's good for me for all the reasons we've said, right? The health and the happiness and all those things. But it's good for other people because number one, it puts me in a position to be better for them, to serve them better, to, not yell at my kids or to have energy to show up. And then also it's showing them what we feel they're worthy of, right? Those things that we believe about ourselves, we teach what we are. So we're showing them, I believe that you are a human with real needs. Like you're not making up that you feel dissatisfied right now. You're not making up your emotion or your tiredness or whatever it is. That is real. And I'm empowering you that you have choices that you can make that will improve your health and happiness. And that's your responsibility. And most importantly, I think you're worthy of that. And it really, like if we have a whole culture of, we all are participating in healthy self-care, it's going to bring everybody up.
Yeah. Because how could it not? Right.
Yeah.
Like when it would just be so lovely to get there. And I think the holidays are a great place to do that, right? Like talking about people that are stressed during the holidays, people that are grieving during the holidays, it almost always makes them feel better and makes others feel better when they can find a way to sort of serve during the holidays and really kind of give back or take care of others in a way that they're also balancing kind of their own needs. But having that be a component is really important. It's also a really important component for a lot of folks when they're struggling with a depression, is to be able to help others, to find a purpose and to be able to sort of give back. So it sounds like that was one of the areas you talked about for managing the holidays. Do you have any suggestions on how folks can go about that? Maybe in this year where things are super different?
I think it's really helpful, like it's been implied here, but to recognize that, self-care doesn't mean alone time. Sometimes it does, right? And I recommend everybody takes like half an hour of quiet time a day, because that's giving you that time to be like proactive and to set intention and to connect with your higher sources of power and to practice gratitude, all those kinds of things. So I recommend a little bit of quiet time every day that's your own. But we also practice self-care with mindfulness and gratitude and these things that we're doing throughout the day. And then, as you mentioned, with other people, right? When we are serving, when we are with our kids and we want everybody to go outside and get fresh air, that's self-care. And sometimes moms are like, you know what? I didn't realize I was doing a lot of self-care. Like these things I do with my kids, these bring me joy. And I thought I needed to, go for an hour walk by myself to participate in self-care or whatnot, right? But we can definitely, include others in the things that are healthy for us too. But specifically service, that's what you were asking about, right?
Right. Yeah. But that was a really great point. Thank you for highlighting that self-care doesn't necessarily mean it's something you do alone.
Yeah.
People definitely assume that that's what it means, though. Like they hear
I think you're right.
Absolutely hear the term self-care and they say, okay, I guess that means alone time. I don't have time for alone time. What are you talking about?
Right. Well, and I would say when your kids are young in that season of motherhood, there's not a whole lot of extra time hanging around, right? Kids need you. And I think we can realize that we can have some separation, that it's good for our kids to have other caregivers, and it's, good for our kids to learn patience, and they don't need everything every moment. It's good for them to learn independent play. It's also okay to say, I'm choosing to have this much alone time every day. And it doesn't have to be an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours every day if that's not what you choose, right? That we can still be taking care of ourselves in other ways. But if we do need that alone time, or we do need to schedule that therapy appointment, or we do need to do something that is a sacrifice, that's where that I'm worthy of it comes in. That I'm worthy of those needs. Even if it is a sacrifice, it's worth it.
Great. These are wonderful tips. I hope that people that are listening are taking notes.
I am.
And you are, I know you are. But if they're not, where can people find you? I know we'll give it all at the end too, but where is sort of the central place to sort of find all of this sort of good knowledge that you're putting out there right now?
Yeah. So my website is my hub. That's www.lovin, Lovin, lifewithlittles.com. And got tons of stuff on there. You can find free resources and paid things, coaching, tons of articles about all this kind of stuff. And then I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at the same handle.
Okay, great.
But okay, Jenni. Sorry, I think I keep getting off. Do you want the service idea?
That is what we do here at Changing Perspectives. So you're fitting right in. It's okay.
I'm just surprised we haven't. I'm just surprised we haven't heard a dog bark yet.
That's pretty good
because they're sleeping. It's nap time for them.
Okay, good. Okay, so the service, though, I think one of the things you already alluded to, one thing that we can do that's really important is to be aware of those who are grieving and having hard times during the holidays. And there is such a power in just being there. And that's something we talked about. I actually had a good friend come on and share some of her experiences of grief in the holidays. And I've been thinking about this a lot because we want to be helpful. I think so many of us everybody I meet, there's so many good hearts and good people, and we just want to be helpful. And inadvertently, sometimes the things we say don't really help.
Right? True. It's true.
Sometimes they make it worse.
Not from a poorly intended place, but just,
right.
I think we don't really get good education on how to be helpful, especially for people that are grieving. So we just sort of blurt out whatever sort of fires in our brain first. And sometimes it's hurtful more than helpful.
I totally agree. And I think the first part of that is kind of coming to an understanding of grieving in general, and that it's not a problem. Grieving is not something that we need to fix. It is a process, and it is healthy, and it is okay. And to really just be there for people and be a safe space for them and say, I don't have to fix your problem. Sometimes I'm going to bring you a casserole. Sometimes I'm going to write you a note with well-intentioned words. Sometimes I'm going to all these things that we can do. But when we lead with love and we just are a space to just listen and be there, I think that shows our friends and our loved ones, I am okay with you in your discomfort. You do not have to fix yourself. You don't have to solve your problems. You do not have to be having a pretty face and dry eyes to come to me. I love you all the time, no matter what. And when we are just there, I think that is the service that we can always give.
Yeah. To just show up and hold that space, right? I think that so often people are afraid to do that, right? Like afraid to reach out to that friend who's grieving, or reach out to that colleague who's lost a parent, or someone who's now alone for the holidays for the first time, because we don't want to make them feel uncomfortable or make them feel sad or remind them of their grief. And really, we should be doing the opposite. Instead of leaning away from it, we should be leaning into it and just kind of showing up. I know that that's scary for people to do, but it means so much for so many people that are grieving, just to be remembered and seen.
I love that. I love that connection between, service or helping people and the recognition that there's a lot of folks that are struggling during this time of year, and how it brings up a lot of tough feelings and tough emotions. And that, you hear the term service and you might think, oh, I don't have time to volunteer. What does Marielle mean by that? But it's really, it's really about just being there. And it's a simple phone call or a simple message or a note or something. We just had friends of ours recently lose a family dog, and that, pet loss is real loss. And we talked about that on the show a fair amount. And it's just as simple as, a message, a phone call, and, honoring that loss and giving space to talk about it. And that's service. And I think that that's important to recognize. And again, I feel like there's a lot of interconnectivity with all of these things that we're talking about, self-care to, what does it mean to be perfect and all of these different things, service. I think it's important to sort of recognize that as well.
Sure. I think the holidays are also a time to show our kids, right, that joy is meant to be shared.
Right.
And whether that is, I asked on my Instagram feed again, Josh, I don't know if you've read that one, but what's one of your favorite service ideas? And it was so fun for me to just scroll through and see how many people participate in like angel trees, and how many people send boxes and how many people dropped off Secret Service on porches. I mean, can't you just see like the joy like spreading, right?
Yeah.
And I love that. And being able to be, and again, it takes intentionality, it takes planning, it takes saying, and I think this year, I mean, maybe it's a great opportunity because we're not going to have all the concerts. We're not going to have all the games and the end of semester things. And maybe this is a cool chance to kind of bring it back to some of those simple, beautiful service opportunities that are there for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of like bring it back to the basics, right? Like simplify it. You're right. Because I think
we kind of have to, like, you can't,
well,
I mean,
yeah.
you have to sort of bring it back to the basics. It's the safest way to do it. But I like that idea for sure.
Yeah. You know, I want to not lose sight of the fact that you actually wrote a book, and I'm so intrigued by the title of your book. So it's Peace Amidst the Mayhem, which is life, right? I think that's so much what we're talking about. But this part, you can be calm, confident, and compassionate in any circumstance. That is amazing. Like, right, to be able to sort of envision that for everybody, that we could be calm, that we could be confident, and at the same time compassionate in any circumstance. That just feels so good,
doesn't it? That's the subtitle for those who aren't looking at the book. That's the subtitle of my book. And it really, I mean, it came to me as I've written this whole book. I had the title, I was almost done with it. I'm in an editing process and I didn't have a subtitle. And I thought, what does it feel like to be at peace? And those are the things that came to me. It's that inner calm. It's that inner confidence that, you know, we're going to make it through.
Right.
That even though things are hard, even though things are uncertain, even though, you know, I am going through a hard thing, I'm having this difficult emotion and this difficult time, there's a confidence that I'm going to be okay in the end. And we can handle this together. And then that compassion, right? That's what it all is centered on. Well, and that happened also with C's, which is kind of cool.
I know. Yeah. Like the alliteration there is perfect too. You love that alliteration, huh? Well, and you love it. Lovin Life with littles. Yeah. You love that.
We'll put the link to you as well as the book in our show notes.
Yeah, great.
But is that available everywhere? Amazon and where can we
Amazon,
find the book?
Barnes and Noble, online, everywhere online these days. Okay. Right.
That is
the book is meant to be more of a transformative experience. It's not necessarily, what's the word? There's space for journaling and there's space for really doing something with the information. And there's a focus on, you know, learning to let go of things that are holding us back. And there's stories and science and things to back that up. But a lot of it comes back to, are we choosing to let go of perfection, even though that's served us in a way in the past? Are we choosing to let go of control, even though that's a really human desire to want to control things and feel comfortable in that way? Are we choosing to let go of resentment, even though it feels like we're enacting justice, or maybe we're protecting ourselves from having that happen again, but being willing to let go of those things that really stop us from loving ourselves and feeling loved and loving others?
I love it. That's all wonderful.
And that sort of inspired me to, before we end, I really want to make sure I give you a chance to talk about your recent post, both on Instagram and Facebook. And as a musician, I was absolutely immediately drawn to the picture of the guitar. It's like, oh, that's a guitar. I like Guitar Radar. And you quote Mother Teresa, which is so special. And this post talks about service, and the quote from Mother Teresa is, if you can't feed 100 people, then feed just one. And do you want to talk a little bit about that post and the inspiration, the story behind it real quick?
Sure. As I mentioned, I feel like so blessed in my upbringing because I've had so many experiences where I could learn from them and draw from them and then try and emulate them. I think a lot of times our learning in childhood or in whatever way is, here, I'm going to learn what not to do. But I was blessed to also have majority have what to do. And so this particular post that Josh is talking about was just a tradition that I don't actually know when it started, as long as I can remember it was happening. But as a family, my parents came from large families, and my mom had several siblings that lived around us. And so we would all get together in the church gym for Thanksgiving. And we're talking like 30, 40 upwards. I don't know how many people,
Wow.
but it was, yeah. So we're talking big gathering, all cousins and aunts and uncles and people that I loved. And every Thanksgiving morning, my uncle would go to downtown Seattle and invite people living on the streets to join us for Thanksgiving dinner. And they would come sometimes one, sometimes four, and just eat with us and hang out with us. And we all remember the man who introduced himself as Billy the Bum. And that was every time, what's your name? Billy the Bum. Who are you? Billy the Bum. And we all remember the Billy the Bum. And he, and the picture that Josh said is a guitar, because he would play the guitar. My uncle had a guitar, and we always had a little talent show. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was more humorous or talented, but it was a show. And Billy would always play the same song for us each year and share stories. And we really, almost got to know him over those Thanksgivings. And my uncle would try and keep tabs on him and helped him find a job at one point. And as I said in the post, I don't know what happened to Billy. One Thanksgiving, my uncle went, and it actually wasn't Thanksgiving. It was at another time he went to find him, and he couldn't find him, and wasn't able to track him down again. But what I did learn, and what I do know, is that is what the holidays and really what life is all about, is creating that joy that we had within our family and that we celebrated, and finding that gratitude and then sharing that with others.
Right. And having compassion, right? Like tying that back to sort of the subtitle of your book there, and tying it back to so much of what we talked about. Compassion can change everything, right? And can allow you to see people not just in a different light, but can allow you to see people for who they really are, right? And let's go of all the other judgments and all of the other emotions, when we just can have compassion for each other as human beings. And I think that's a story that really encapsulates that. And that's what the holidays, that's what I think being a human is about, but also that's what the holiday season is about, right? It's an opportunity to sort of connect and make memories and be compassionate and share with each other.
Well, and
absolutely.
That gesture is so impactful, but it doesn't take a lot of work, right? I mean, you and your family, by the way, I need to come to one of those Thanksgivings. That sounds awesome.
I know. We're all missing them now, because we're all spread out, and my grandparents have passed away, and we have a group me text, and it's wonderful cousin love and all that, but we don't get to jump rope at Thanksgiving anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And but you're already experiencing it, right? You're already creating joy within your family. And it's a simple thing to just invite sort of an outsider to come, and so impactful for Billy, but didn't take a lot of work for you and your family, right?
Yeah.
And so
it didn't take any. I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge, maybe, to identify those things that are impactful, those simple things that don't take a lot of sort of work, but that are still special and impactful. I love that sentiment of creating joy and sharing it with others.
And that's why I included that Mother Teresa, right? Because we have big plans and big goals, and I'm a firm believer in big dreams, and I want to help everybody in the whole world. That's like not an exaggeration. My heart goes out, right?
Right.
At the same time, I can't do that.
Right.
But I can help one, and that's where it starts.
And that's where you make
excellent.
Lasting change.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one person.
Marielle, you're such a good fit for our show, because this show really is about changing perspectives, right? So we talk about so many different types of topic, but the one thread is that we challenge folks to look at things differently, and challenge. Today we challenge our audience to look at perfection differently, self-care differently, service and stress. So this has been awesome.
Great. And I have one more.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay. I think we've already harped on it, but what if it's really as simple as it's actually about love?
I think it is.
I do too. And I think sometimes we forget, and it gets messy in real life, and it's hard sometimes, but when we believe it really is that simple, I think that really like you said, changes our perspective on life.
Yeah, I think when you boil everything down, when you strip everything else away, that's what matters, right? And I, as a hospice worker, as someone that has done hospice work and sat with lots of people literally as they've taken their last
End
breath,
of life. Yeah.
that's what matters to every single person. It's not about their job. It's not about whether they were a perfectionist or what they did right or what they did wrong. It's about the love and the connections with the people that they love. That's what matters. And it's so easy to lose sight of that and get caught up and swept away in all of the other stuff. But if you're good at stopping and pausing and reflecting and sort of grounding yourself back in that space of love, that can change everything for you. Mm-hmm. Even, the most challenging times, right? Because the love is there.
And as parents, what a great gift we can give to our kids to have them realize that and see that it actually is about love. And you know what? I think it's maybe there might be people listening to this feeling a little like squirmy in their seats and be like, oh, that's a little awkward thing to talk about, love. But I think that's important to get folks to realize that that's okay and that's normal and that's good and it's okay to talk about it,
Yeah.
Not just normal, but it's necessary, right? Like we all need that.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I have a quick story about love real quick. And
please.
Jenny's like, what is he going to talk about? But the difference between sort of where we are now today versus where we were, maybe 20 or 30 years ago. But I was talking with a couple of friends of mine recently, and we were talking about their fathers and how their fathers, it was never something, love or saying I love you never really came up. Right. And one of my friends who's in mid 40s said, I was 41 when the first time I actually told my dad, I love you. And we talked about how it's so different and how their fathers now as elderly men are maybe even, more open, more loving. They've sort of changed with the times a little bit. Now they see their dads and it's like, hey, I love you, Dad. Whereas we sort of put that against or juxtaposition with our kids, and we both have all of us have teenage boys, and we regularly, we drop them off to go to school. All right, love you, bud. Love you too. It's something that normally happens now, and it's nice to take a step back and go, wow, I think we're doing something really right these days. That's something that has really gone in a good way to change from historically what father-son relationships were to what they maybe are now. But that just popped into my head, so that's my story.
I love that story. And I think my parents always used to say, just do a little bit better than we did. Right?
Yes.
Just do a little bit better than we did. And that's what I'm hoping my kids do, because I know I'm messing up every day, anyway. But
sure, we all are, because we're humans.
A little bit better. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And, taking the good and then maybe improving a little bit upon it. But I love that story, that openness and showing love in a new, different kind of way.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I'm feeling so positive and uplifted. I mean, we're recording this on a Thursday night. I know this is going to go live on a Monday. Hopefully people are listening to this and it's sort of setting their sort of intention for the week as they're heading into what might be a really busy, stressful week, and helping them to make some decisions to make that a better experience for them and for everyone that they love and everyone that they're serving. And I think I would say to folks listening to go to your website, because your website A is very easy to navigate. I don't know if you designed it or if someone else did, but it's really user friendly. It's very organized. And I think if I'm right, I think you've got some like coaching sessions or other sort of opportunities for support coming up in the like next month or so, that folks might want to hop on, because you are a calming, supportive voice and presence. And I know we've just sort of scratched the tip here about what you can offer to people in terms of insight. So I'm hoping that people will go check out your supports and your services a little bit more, because you've got so much more to offer to the world.
Well, thank you. And I love that. I love connecting with people. I love seeing people get a little bit more clarity, a little bit more joy, right? And then being able to share that with their kids. And it's a fun thing I get to do.
Yeah. Well, you're meant to do it. You're doing a great job. And I'm glad that we were able to I'm glad we were able to connect, and I'm glad that our sort of circles have brought us together.
It's true. I have loved following you on Instagram, and it's like, oh yes, every time you post, I'm like, yes, big heart, yes.
Same. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there are people that kind of come into your sphere, and you're like, oh yes, I totally get what you're saying, and I also need what you're saying, right? Because we sort of need to support each other too, and so often you're one of the ones who your posts, I'm just saying like, oh yes, I needed that reminder. I needed to see that. I needed to like feel those words and feel that reminder. So also hopefully folks will follow you on social media, because I think now more than ever, it's really important to have positivity and inspiration on our social medias. And you are a great source for that, but also not like in this sort of hokey surface, not challenging way, right? Like you're encouraging people to really kind of dig deep and think. And that's where growth comes in. So I feel so honored that you came to join us today.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, I think I love to bring the positivity and the joy, and I believe that fully coexists. And that's like, again, the title of my book, right? That coexists with the hard, and that you don't have to be put together. You don't have to have everything going the right way. You don't have to have anything before we can start feeling joy, and we can start moving forward with peace and the good things that life has to offer, because it's a good life, even
it really is.
With all the hard things, it's good for us.
Yeah. And we've got all this opportunity to like love each other and love one another,
yes,
and love ourselves, right? Like despite all the hardships.
Yes.
So it really is a good life.
Speaking of love, we need all the Changing Perspectives fans to show Marielle some love. Going to lovinlifewithlittles.com, Lovin Life with Littles on Facebook and Instagram, and check out the book, Peace Amidst the Mayhem. You can be calm, confident, and compassionate in any circumstance. Available on Amazon or Barnes and Nobles, wherever you find books. So yeah.
Great.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. We'd love to have you on again in the future. We can go sort of deeper into some of these topics, but it was a delight to talk to you today, and have a very peaceful holiday season.
Yes, you too. And all of the listeners, happy holidays.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back, Jenny.
Welcome back.
So fun to talk to Marielle. As we said before the interview, it was just so like calming.
Yeah.
It was just a nice sort of easy chat with her. And, we've been lucky. Every guest we have on the show, it ends up being just a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. You don't want like a forced sort of framed up, scripted interview. You don't want that. You just want an organic conversation.
Right.
And that's definitely what it was with Marielle. And we talked about, I don't know if this is on the recording or not. We chatted after we shut the mics off, and we said I can't believe an hour went by. I don't know if we said that in the interview or not. Who knows? An hour went by so quick, and we're definitely going to have her back on the show. Right?
For sure. Mm-hmm.
Yes. All right. Well, anything else for the listening audience today, Jenny?
No, I think that was it. Yeah. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Hey, just quick reminder, we haven't talked about this in a little bit, but we will still read your iTunes reviews over the air. If you submit a brand new review, rate and review us on iTunes. Share the Changing Perspectives podcast with your friends. Write a new review, and we will read it over the air and shout you out.
Cool.
All right.
Cool.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. For today's show notes links, you can check out lovinlifewithlittles.com. Oh, don't forget Marielle's book, Peace Amidst the Mayhem. You can be calm, confident, and compassionate in any circumstance. You can find that on Amazon. There's links on our website to the book, so go check that out. And for us, follow us on Facebook, everybody, at Changing Perspectives Podcast, and on Instagram at Changing Perspectives Blog. You can send us an email to info@changingperspectivesonline.com. You can also visit our website by going to changingperspectivesonline.com. And while you're there, don't forget to visit the shop to check out all of that Changing Perspectives merchandise. Go ahead and subscribe to the show, everyone, so you'll never miss an episode, and we will see you next time. Say bye, Jenny.
Bye, Jenny.
The Changing Perspectives podcast is produced, recorded, and edited by Dizzy Bird Studios. Copyright 2020. Please visit Dizzy Bird Studios on Facebook. Facebook.com /DigiBird Studios.